Welcome to the Dynasty Football Key, unlocking success in every episode, talking NFL and fantasy football year round. So like and subscribe to stay ahead of the game. And in the description, you can find my Twitter, Dynasty F Key, and all of our other socials pretty much are Dynasty Football Key. And you can submit a roster review over at the Patreon. Join the Discord as well. We're trying to grow the community. And in today's episode, we're doing a top 50 running back tier list after the intro. All right, let's get started. So in tier 1, the S tier, the money tier, I've got really the only 3 running backs that I trust to start up with, or really any team. These are the guys that I would trade for. They're not guys that I feel that in a couple years they're going to disappear out of the league, and they have a very defined role. And I do think that in time they could actually get better. So with number 1, I've got Bijan Robinson. And he does seem to have an all-around skill set of pass catching and ability to carry the ball as many times as the coaching staff would need to. And with the departure of Arthur Smith, I think that this could be a breakout year 2 for Bijan Robinson. And Jahmyr Gibbs, he's the new Alvin Kamara. He is the elite pass catching running back, where I think in any given season he's eclipsing well above 80 catches per season. And although he has David Montgomery in the role of goal line back right now, we did see when David Montgomery went down that they would give Jahmyr the ball a little bit more. I think in year 3, Jahmyr's role only grows, and I know that this is year 2 he's going in, but this is all from a dynasty perspective. So this year, the Lions are going for the Super Bowl. They're going to still give David Montgomery the ball. Okay, so I don't have Jahmyr Gibbs at number 1 because of that. It's definitely a split. I know that Bijan Robinson has Tyler Algier, who was very capable. I like Tyler Algier. But still, the way that Jahmyr's body type is versus a Bijan, that's kind of where I split the difference there. And at number 3, I've got Breece Hall, who everything I said for Bijan Robinson, I think applies for Breece Hall. Breece is only 1 year older, and he had an incredible season that was better than Bijan's. And I think with Aaron Rodgers returning, the season that he's about to have may be Breece Hall's best season to come. He can catch the ball. He was one of the best weapons they had outside of Garrett Wilson. I think that this team will get some sort of additional weapon, even outside of Mike Williams. But none of that's going to affect what I think Breece Hall can do now and in the long term. And there is that slight threat of when Aaron Rodgers leaves, but just like with Bijan Robinson, whose quarterback also had the ACL tear, I'm just not going to say that the talent of Bijan Robinson is dependent on the quarterback. So let's go ahead and jump into the next tier. I've got Christian McCaffrey, Achane, Jonathan Taylor, Travis Etienne, Rachaad White, Saquon Barkely, and Kyren Williams. Christian McCaffrey is going to be the oldest running back in this tier, but he had the highest points per game out of all of the running backs here, has been really good for many years. He's on a great offense, and this team was in the Super Bowl, and they're going to continue to give McCaffrey that lead role. I'm not too worried about his backfield mates at all. This is one of the best running backs we've seen in our lifetimes. At number 5, Achane. He's got this unique speed, and this whole team is really spacing out all of their defenders, because you've got a Tyreek Hill and a Jalen Waddle who are really stretching the field and giving a lot of space for a Raheem Mostert and a Achane to do whatever they need to do. And I expect Mostert to be in his final season with the team. I could be wrong about that, but I do think at some point the keys will get turned over to Achane to become the number 1 running back for this team. And with Jonathan Taylor, he just got that contract. His role is secure, so I believe in him. His teammate Zach Moss was able to thrive in that role. Jonathan Taylor was injured last year, was coming off of a contract dispute, so I think that this season, with the quarterback also being injured in the past and now healthy, this is wheels up for Jonathan Taylor. Travis Etienne also has a really defined role with his college teammate, Trevor Lawrence. I like the direction that team's headed. He showed that he could carry the rock, and the way that the backfield touches were going, they were not necessarily trusting some of the other teammates there. That may change, but still, I do like anyone in this tier who I know is a really secure starter, and the guys behind them just have not shown that ability to take over. I'm feeling very comfortable. That's why I've got Rachaad White as well. I like most of these guys who have that pass catching skill set, and he has a lot of carries under his belt as well. As far as, okay, this is not just a pass catching guy. This is someone that they really trust in most of these game situations, and he's not coming off the field. Saquon Barkley, he's joining with the Eagles, and we know that any running back that has a rushing quarterback does get hindered from the goal line ability, and it's not just the tush push. It's anyone behind a Lamar Jackson. I mean, that's anyone behind a lot of these different quarterbacks, like Josh Allen. When you see a James Cook not be able to get as many touchdowns as we would like, so that's a little bit of a threat. But he has the pass catching ability, elite athleticism. I think a efficient offense is good for any running back to at least raise the floor of what they're able to do. And overall, this is a great player. Now, Kyren Williams, the second highest fantasy points per game on this list, just really showed that he was someone that, it's time to stop sleeping on him. We're going to see what happens in this draft, but with the way that the reports are going, it really feels like the Rams would need to draft one of the top running backs in this class for Kyren to not be the starter this year, or to really feel like his workload's getting moved away from him. And with the running backs that have a quarterback that's not running or rushing, then you know that Kyren's going to be getting the goal line work. They're going to lean on him to take pressure off of Matthew Stafford. Let's go ahead and jump into the next tier B. We've got James Cook, Kenneth Walker, Josh Jacobs, Isiah Pacheco, the Super Bowl champ, DeAndre Swift, and Javonte Williams. James Cook, like I just mentioned, he's on the Buffalo Bills. We've seen Gabe Davis leave. Maybe James Cook is relied upon even more in the passing game because he did show that he can catch, and he has some really good games down the stretch of the season. I like what James Cook can bring to the table. Kenneth Walker, he showed that he can be a workhorse. There are some people that have him much higher than this, and he does have a significant threat, I think, amongst any of the running backs I've listed so far. Zach Charbonnet behind Kenneth Walker is the biggest threat to Kenneth Walker's workload. Still really good player, and the team just has a ton of weapons to keep those boxes light, and Walker can take advantage. Josh Jacobs, he is now on the Green Bay Packers, another really young and efficient offense where it's just going to be really hard to also account for Josh Jacobs when you have all of these other young receivers running around the field. Really defined role, pass catching ability, former first round player, only 26 years old as of the start of the season. So I like what he can do. Isiah Pacheco, with the Chiefs, they're going to pass a lot. And one of the biggest questions was, is he going to get that pass catching work? And we saw down the end of the season, they relied upon Pacheco more and more, and he was catching most of those balls. He was not dropping balls. So they kept trusting him. And the running backs that were in that backfield with him, they are getting older, like Jerick McKinnon and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, whose option didn't get picked up. So those players are not going to be in his way or a factor at all going forward. So now this is Isiah Pacheco's backfield. I expect the Chiefs to draft a running back because they have to address it with what the movement that is taking place. But still, this is Pacheco's role in his first 2 seasons. He's won 2 Super Bowls, and they have trusted him every step of the way. And we've got DeAndre Swift, who I've always liked. Really good player, has that pass catching ability, but he was with the Eagles and wasn't able to get that goal line work. I think now with the Chicago Bears drafting a rookie quarterback, they're going to have that rookie quarterback rely upon the run game, rely upon the intermediary parts of the field where you're passing down to either your tight end or checking down to the running back. DeAndre Swift's going to take advantage. I'm not going to be sleeping on Swift this season, even though we had much higher expectations for him. I still got him at running back 15. Javonte Williams at running back 16. We've seen games where he's had an incredible amount of catches. He does not have a quarterback right now, so I do expect people to be lower on him. Only 24 years old going into this season. I like what Javonte Williams can bring to the table as a starting running back there. And with the guys behind him, like Jaleel McLaughlin, he really has trouble driving piles forward just because of him being undersized, Jaleel McLaughlin. So he's not going to really take work from Javonte. And Samaje Perine, he's going to be 31, and we'll see what they do in the draft. But I feel very confident that the needs of the Broncos are not at running back. They probably going to be quarterback, and if it's a rookie, again, just like with Swift in Chicago, those rookie quarterbacks are going to be relied upon checking down to that running back to bail them out in some spots. Here in the C tier, I've got Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, Trey Benson, David Montgomery. I've got Jonathon Brooks, Tony Pollard, Joe Mixon, and Alvin Kamara. He is looks to be maybe the third highest points per game on this list. Even though he's 29 years old, I mean, this is the guy that I want some of these other players to become, is an Alvin Kamara type who's going to be guaranteed to get 80 catches per season. And we did see Alvin Kamara's efficiency rushing go down, and maybe that's why folks are high on Kendra Miller. It could be a little bit of a 1-2 punch there, but it's such an elite pass catching ability. The other weapons on the team, it's Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. They let go of Mike Thomas, so is it A.T. Perry stuff? So do they draft another receiver? But either way, Kamara is guaranteed a lot of money. He's going to get the ball a ton for that team. And Derek Carr doesn't move around a ton rushing wise, so I can definitely see him checking down to Kamara. Derrick Henry with the Ravens. This is incredible. We've always wanted to see Derrick Henry on just a better team that's a little bit more efficient. And Ravens have always been the top in the run game, and they're going to continue to be one of the number one teams in the run game. And even though I was mentioning how rushing quarterbacks affect a running back, well, with Derrick Henry, he was never a pass catcher. So that negative doesn't really apply to Derrick Henry, who gets all his work on the ground. So I think this could be just another day at the job for Derrick Henry to rush and get a lot of touchdowns in this upcoming season. And I've got my first rookie, Trey Benson, here. This guy showed 4.38 speed at the combine. I like this tape from a couple years ago where he's breaking a lot of tackles, and he had recovered from some injuries this past year. Still look good, just not depended upon as much, but he still had some good plays, and the numbers aren't maybe as high as we want him to be, but just with the way the combine went and the overall profile, I see the odds-on favorite for RB1 are between Trey Benson and Jonathon Brooks. So really, it's going to come down to landing spot for these running backs. Benson could be the RB3 when it's all said and done if one of these running back needy teams like the Dallas Cowboys selects any other running back and they're the starter, because there's almost no one starting for that team right now. So that's going to be fluid with these rookie rankings, and I've got other rookie ranking specific videos that you can check out. And I really like what Trey Benson out of Florida State can bring to the table. All right, next we've got David Montgomery. He is the B back to Jahmyr Gibbs in Detroit, and he was really good. I think everyone slept on him this past season, but he really reprised that Jamal Williams role, got a lot of touchdowns at the goal line, but showed that he could be much more. So he was a significant threat to Jahmyr Gibbs, and for fantasy-wise, he was usable. He was someone you could put in your flex. And I've still got him here for now. The team is good. It's a really awesome team right now, and I like what they're doing over there. At running back 21, Jonathon Brooks at Texas, and this guy's coming off the ACL injury, but all accounts are he's doing well, and the metrics were all in his favor as far as how all of the running backs rank in this class. He was number one in a lot of the different metrics for just per carry and different ways that he can operate and help a team. So you were just hoping that he still has that explosion after the ACL, but the way that the ACL injuries are going these days and the return time, I have a lot of confidence that he can get back to full form. Tony Pollard at 22. Now with the Tennessee Titans, he has Tajay Spears to contend with, and they're kind of similar running backs, but still, Tony Pollard himself was coming off the ACL the past season. Last year he was recovering, and even said himself that he didn't feel himself until about after the bye week in the middle of the season. So we'll see how he looks in Tennessee. He did enough to prove to teams that he was worth a 3-year deal. So excited for Tony Pollard, and congrats to him. And then to end the tier, we got Joe Mixon joining the Houston Texans, who Devin Singletary really had a great season for them. And Stroud was just in his rookie year. So now Stroud in year 2, and maybe they add some other weapons. I think this is going to be a really efficient offense for Mixon to play in. Moving my camera to the S tier so you guys can see the D tier. We've got Najee Harris at RB24, MarShawn Lloyd, running back out of USC, running back 25, Blake Corum, Jaylen Wright, Rhamondre Stevenson, Bijan Robinson, and Zach Charbonnet. And Najee, former first-round running back, has had a secure workload, and the Steelers did end up changing their ways and began to adopt that committee back style that most of the teams in the NFL have used. So even though originally we thought he'd have such an incredible workload that has tapered back some, he's still producing every season. So he's a nice flex running back for our teams. Not something I can complain about. I'll plug and play Najee, set it and forget it, and move on. They're making moves. They've got Russell Wilson. I think this offense could take a step forward, and if that's just 2 more touchdowns on the season for Najee, his numbers could look a lot higher than they were in the past season with that 11.5 points per game. MarShawn Lloyd really showed that he's efficient as a pass catcher, has good size and athleticism. So I like what he can do. We'll see where he lands. Blake Corum, he has, I think, that one of the best, if not the best, PFF grade in the past 10 years out of Michigan. He's a champion. Teams are going to like that and like his work ethic and what he brings to the table. Jaylen Wright, this is a running back who tested really well, some 4.3 speed out of Tennessee, looks really good from the metrics perspective. I think that he could easily be RB1 if he gets drafted to the right team. We've got at running back 28, Rhamondre Stevenson. He's with the Patriots. They just added Antonio Gibson, who's a pass catching back. We'll see how that affects Stevenson, who has that ability to catch the ball. They need a quarterback. They're probably going to take a quarterback. We'll see what that means. But if they do go quarterback, then they're not getting Marvin Harrison Jr., which means that Stevenson's still going to be one of the better options for the quarterback to get the ball to. Yeah, they would go get a second-round running back, most likely, since free agency's over and they didn't make a big splash there. So we'll see what happens with Stevenson. I just think he's got a secure role this past season. He was just a little bit banged up and injured. Bijan Robinson, he's been a faller with Austin Eckler joining the Commanders. We're going to see how that works out. Robinson was never really the guy that they relied upon for the pass catching because they did have Antonio Gibson there. Eckler's going to eat a lot of that. It's just that with the past season with Eckler, we just didn't see what we used to see for me to think that Bijan Robinson's role is gone. I still think he's got a role there. And he's still relatively young. We'll be starting this next season at age 26. Zach Charbonnet, he's 23, very young, behind Kenneth Walker. So we saw that when Walker went down with the injury this past year, Charbonnet was able to pick up the ball right where Walker left off, and he looked really good. Second-round running back, good draft capital, just not buried, but he's behind a really good running back. But the team is great, so we'll just have to, from a dynasty perspective, just ride that out a little bit. And we'll get into the final tier here. Tier E, James Conner at running back 31, Aaron Jones, Jaylen Warren, Braylon Allen, Gus Edwards, Chuba Hubbard, Jahmyr White, Zach Moss, Tyjae Spears, Jerome Ford, Devin Singletary, Kendre Miller, Antonio Gibson, Ray Davis, Tyler Algier, Bucky Irving, Audric Estime, Isaac Arendo, Will Shipley, and Dylan Lobby. And I do want to make a quick note that the tier didn't actually end there. I just wanted to get my top 50 out. Tier probably goes a few more guys. I got Roschon Johnson, Nick Chubb, Chase Brown, Austin Eckler. There's some other guys after that you could definitely take. There's definitely rookies that I would probably prefer at this point to just take shots on. There's other guys that may get some starting time this upcoming season, like a Rico Dowdle, since that's the only running back that the Dallas Cowboys have signed other than having Deuce Vaughn on the team. There's a plethora of other backs here, like Isaiah Davis. I would say, Cody Schrader, Kamini Vidal, Rasheen Ali, Frank Gore Jr., Jaden Sheridan, Dylan Johnson out of Washington, a lot of other names, but we have to let the draft play out, and that's going to determine where those guys go. I do like running backs that are an injury away from the starting job, so anyone that finds himself in that kind of role is great, and once someone gets hurt, then I'll take the next guy who's an injury away. But for now, with James Conner, he's just one of those guys that continues to get slept on, but he continues to produce. And yes, he's at age 29, but this team seems to be primed to add a Marvin Harrison Jr. in the draft or an elite wide receiver in that caliber. And James Conner is still going to have that secure role on the ground. Definitely someone that if you're a rebuilder, you're not going to want any of these older players. But for the win now teams, happy to have Conner as my third flex option. Aaron Jones joins the Minnesota Vikings, and Even though they lost Kirk Cousins, they've got Sam Darnold right now. We'll see what they do in the draft quarterback wise, but he'll have that role. We know what he can do. He's still explosive, at least this last season he was. So I like what he can do. Jalen Warren, Najee Harris's backfield mate, good pass catcher, good burst, and that team seemed to really like him. And there were years where they were looking for that number 2 running back, and Jalen Warren has been great at that role. We've got Braylon Allen, again, one of these rookies that could easily rise up. He's the youngest rookie in the class at age 20, and he's the biggest rookie at the same time. 230 plus, and he may not have the best pass catching ability, but vision's okay. We'll see where he goes. I can see him be a riser pretty easily. Gus Edwards, he has the role, and some reports came out just this week that the team is absolutely viewing Gus Edwards as the workhorse, and that is sometimes misdirection for the draft. So we'll see what they actually do in the draft. Like, they could still go get a Blake Corum, because Gus Edwards, just with the age of a lot of the guys in this range, you can't realistically say that they're the future of the team when you've got some new coaching staffs and new quarterbacks and things like that, and a lot of these different offenses for some of these older running backs. Chuba Hubbard with the Carolina Panthers. He was good this past season, was great in college, 2,000-yard rusher, and this past season was able to prove that he could be a starter. So, hey, this range, we've got some more starters that you can get for a lot less value than some of the ones above there. So why not throw Chuba Hubbard on your team? This team, Carolina Panthers, has so many other needs. Running back just cannot be a priority. It just shouldn't. But at the same time, helping Bryce Young in the run game is important. They got the offensive line settled, so I can see them trying to get a compliment only because what they paid for in a contract with Miles Sanders, they just didn't really have that pan out. So maybe they do go ahead and get that running back just to make sure they have a complete rotation there. We've got Jahmyr White, who now it seems he's going to become the starter for the Raiders. There's some videos of him working out, and it seems like he's getting ready for that role. I think this is the Raiders running back 1 to start the season. They're in range for quarterback potentially in the draft, and in the second round, third round, they're in range for running backs as well. So another volatile position. That's why this guy's lower. You could see some of these guys, if they make it through the draft unscathed, they could rise up to the next tier. Zach Moss, he's now with the Cincinnati Bengals. I like this role for him, and he showed that he could be pretty good with the Indianapolis Colts. He kind of tapered off at the end of the season, but the Bengals still decided to make him the starter going into it. Maybe it's more of a competition between Chase Brown than we think. Maybe people already think that more than I do. I'm not saying that Zach Moss has this locked up at all. That's why I'm mentioning it. This could easily be where you should have Chase Brown. I don't have Chase Brown too much further outside of this same tier that he's in. He's just not listed. Tyjae Spears, he would have been a big riser this offseason, ends up being a faller after Derrick Henry leaves and Tony Pollard enters. But Tony Pollard's not as big of a threat as Derrick Henry. It's just that Henry was not the pass catcher and Tony Pollard is. So they're kind of a similar type player. And there's still a scenario where Tyjae Spears ends up being the better back. We just got to see how that plays out. Jerome Ford, he did a great job picking up the slack for Nick Chubb when he went down. Nick Chubb's supposed to come back at some point, maybe not to start the season, and Ford has some playing time. Maybe, just with the age of Chubb and the injuries piling up, maybe Ford just is in a better opportunity to get more carries. And I think they did sign Donta Foreman and I believe Naheem Hines. So we'll see how that backfield shakes up. He may actually have to end up, ultimately be lower than this. But we'll see how that offseason shakes out for them. Devin Singletary played very well for the Houston Texans, and now he's the starter for the Giants. Singletary's been good. Most places he's been. I'm in a league where Singletary has helped me win 3 titles in the last 4 years, and I'm going very lean at running back. I've got a lot of wide receivers. You start a lot of wide receivers, so he's someone that you can just have and he'll get you some 9.8 points, and you'll be happy with that. Kendre Miller didn't get much of an opportunity last season until the season was pretty much over, and they were just trying to rest players at the end. We'll see if he gets a little bit more of a role this year. Antonio Gibson now with the New England Patriots. I like Gibson's skill set. I've been a fan, so maybe he gets a better opportunity here. It's just that the team last year was not able to put up a lot of points. So you'd be depending on it being PPR type of guy. if there's less possessions overall in the game, less time of possession, it's going to be tough for Gibson. So he may have to even get onto another team to see his value rise. And at that point, the age will catch up to him from a dynasty perspective as far as the value goes. Ray Davis, I like this guy. And look, Isaac Orendo, he could be here. Hey, Audric Estime had one of the best PFF grades that we've seen. I had a video about him recently. Bucky Irving, this guy, pass catcher, but combine speed wasn't where people thought it was going to be, so a bit of a drop. It's just going to come down to the draft capital for them. Will Shipley, Dylan Lobby, pass catchers who, I think they'll be in complementary roles. It's going to depend on the landing spot. So I'll just finally mention that Tyler Algier, 2 years in a row, been a good backup running back. Who knows what happens with Bijan Robinson if this new coach truly does focus everything they can into Bijan Robinson. But even if Bijan, breaks a toenail and needs a game off, there's that one Bijan game where he just didn't play because he was sick or had a headache. Actually, no one even knew until after the game. Anything could happen. Tyler Algier has been consistent, so I just didn't want to leave him off of this list. And that'll do it. That'll end my top 50 running back tiers. And if you go ahead and join the Discord and subscribe over there, we can talk more about how you guys see these players shaking out. Check out the Patreon. I've got the full rankings over there available to anyone who subscribes over there. And jump in the chat. Let me know what you think. Again, like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next video.